Hello and welcome back to the Movie Soup channel. Today I'd like to share my take on the movie American Psycho from the year 2000. I think this is a great allegory on the consumer-driven world of the late 90s and the early 2000s that still holds up today. I thoroughly enjoyed the trained and rehearsed speeches of Patrick Bateman, which very much echoes in today's widespread use of social media slang and jargon, the urban dictionary if you will. And most of all, I enjoy how reality is intertwined with one's imagination and the open ending leaving viewers wonder what was what. So, the movie starts with not just introducing Patrick Bateman. We can hear his quote-unquote perfect speech that sounds rehearsed, we see his routine being exemplary, we see what he uses and wears, perfect well-grounded selection all around. But this narration is not for the viewer. As a matter of fact, it is Patrick narrating his own life for himself. He's a cog in the large contraption that is modern first world country upper middle class. The contraption dictates what he has to do, how he has to speak, how he has to look, and so on. Patrick Bateman has nothing he believes he chooses or decides. He thinks there is no him and that he feels nothing, but he also believes his mind is above it since he understands his position and contemplates it. I think quite the opposite is true, however. Patrick says he doesn't feel anything. Of course he does. Hence the monologue and his continuous internal burning rage inferno. He persuades himself he's a victim of circumstance, yet he is not willing to sacrifice any of his comforts or perks in favor of freeing himself. Patrick not only enjoys what he is and what he does, he simply is bored. For Patrick and everyone else like him, the opposite sex is meat, an object of sexual pursuit, exploit, and humiliation. Patrick seeks constant stimulation. Music is one of the pleasures he resorts to when he has to join the public and cannot indulge in something more intricate. I also think Patrick might be into music as it is something that allows him to focus on his own inner rage. When he listens to music, he can dive deep into his murderous thoughts and imaginations. Patrick is also extremely worried about his success and social stance. He has the right fiancée and he goes to the right places, but at the same time he cannot stand her and cannot stand getting less than one of the best tables at a restaurant. Social interaction at the restaurant shows how similar everyone in their circle is. Most likely they have somewhat similar thoughts as well. It is a nice dark humor satire, having Patrick express the problems they all should worry about, acting like he's a bigger man, while the rest of the movie goes out of its way to prove quite the opposite. His night is not over after he goes to some social place. He needs to resort to his most satisfying craving, finding a victim female who he seduces and kills. Patrick enjoys that one of his hobbies the most since he can openly express his physical dominance over opposite sex and also someone who he believes is lower class. We peek into how Patrick deals with the people he believes are lower than him in his daily life. He disrespects them, uses them as tools, and overall has no real acknowledgement of them. It should not be a surprise for the viewer to see Patrick stimulating his senses by watching porn while trying to get his lover girl out for a hangout. One thing he seems to desperately try to avoid is quiet. We can see how some of his friends cope with the pressures of their quote-unquote hard lives, booze, drugs, sex, and so on. His girl friend in particular is so drugged up she does not realize where she seems to be dining. The food ordering process is another example of a purposefully well-rehearsed lines by Patrick. I think he does not just want to fit in, he wants to be better than others. Hence, what he perceives as perfection must be present in every detail. Now it is time for Patrick to once again face that single harsh reality he tries to ignore, that the very social structure that put him where he is also is the reason he will never be better or good enough for his own aspirations. No matter his tailor, barber, or print shop, Paul Allen has it better. Next class. Paul Allen is someone Patrick believes should be equal to him, but instead he does not even know who Patrick Bateman is. To vent his anger, Patrick resorts to his normal humiliate/kill routine This happens to be a nice homeless dude and his dog who get the knife and a stomp respectively. Patrick's speech prior to killing them is what he lacked the balls to tell Paul Allen, as he is desperately afraid to lose what he has already. But the fact that someone Patrick believes should be equal to him has more success cannot be ignored, and of course he focuses solely on Paul. And he gets a taste of his own medicine, real bad. I think their little hangout ends at a restaurant. I think Patrick got so ramped up by Paul's treatment of him that he went back home and imagined how he would kill him. It is very interesting to see that even in his imagination, Patrick had utmost worry about his perfect life. His floors had to be covered with newspapers, he had to wear a raincoat of sorts to not spoil his suit, and when he disposed of the body, he, of course, had to use an appropriate bag for that. Also, even in his own imagination, Patrick unwillingly admits that someone like Paul has a better place than him. Patrick does not really have to work hard and is arguably already extremely successful, being just 27 years of age, and it is something that is a given due to his social status and upbringing. But the flip side of the very same situation is that there is someone who has it better, maybe because they work harder, or maybe because their social stance is stronger. That is not something Patrick can admit even to himself. So Patrick kills Paul in his own imagination, and he has killed before, seemingly without any remorse. But this time is different. This time he killed someone who actually matters, not just a piece of meat nice ass from a club, but someone who potentially may be even equal to Patrick himself. And he is afraid, because there certainly will be someone looking into Paul's disappearance. So Patrick bothers himself with covering his tracks, and accepts the fact that he might be questioned by a private detective maybe, someone charismatic and insightful, but nothing Patrick would not be able to see right through, of course. I like how elaborate Patrick's imagination is. He comes up with ample detail, diversity to his characters, and develops his imagined situation gradually. I guess that is how the mind of a sociopath works. Patrick's mental state degrades rapidly because of this. He arranges a double escort date at his place to further cover his imagined tracks. The entire time he is with the two girls, it is important to understand why he films it and looks at himself in the mirror. He is indeed better than Paul, more physical, he deserves what Paul has, and killing him was the right choice to make. But sex alone is not enough. They have to pay for being with Patrick, and they get off easy, relatively speaking. Louis, one of his colleagues, reminds Patrick of that social inequality by showing off his new business card, which also happens to be quite badly executed. Patrick thinks he wants to kill Louis, but he doesn't do that, as Paul's imagined death is a burden too heavy on its own for him already, and Louis's affection towards Paul is a barrier he most certainly cannot cross. I like how Patrick's mental degradation is facilitated by Louis's new business card presentation, and their misogynistic exchange does fit the narrative of the movie, but what I think spoils the scene a little is two things. First, showing Louis as gay and having affection for Patrick. This does not serve any purpose in the movie, and second, having Patrick obsessed with serial killers is depicted as self-centered, emotionless, and passionless, so having a passion like that does not seem to fit the rest of the picture. Patrick needs to restore his manliness and reassert his dominance, so he meets up with and fucks his second girlfriend. She pretty much openly admits her suicidal thoughts to him, but she's nothing more than a tool to Patrick. There are some who think they are smarter than others, or they can see through the veneer, yet they all end up like the rest, under the knife. Patrick's secretary represents someone who is relatively pure and lower class to him. She is essentially a servant in his eyes. He plays with her and commands her, but he does not even remotely consider her as equal or worthy of his affection. But he wants to have fun, so Patrick boasts a bit and invites her for dinner. We see the other side of Patrick's circle, those who desperately want in. They are willing to accept the lies, the disrespect, probably even the abuse, both mental and physical, just to have a shot at becoming one of them. This individual, however, turns out to be quite stupid and naive. Probably this is what saves her from the same fate as most other Patrick's girls. Killing her won't bring him quite the satisfaction he craves. Patrick is left unsatisfied, so his mind goes on another rant and he imagines having a lunch with a detective, getting grilled and having to come up with more track covering. None of this, of course, actually takes place, and the scene with Patrick chasing the cheap escort lady is quite nice and indicates a final breaking point of his mental degradation. So Patrick starts breaking his routine, going off the rails in real life. He breaks up with his fiancée, hallucinates when out and about, shoots at the police, kills a guard, and confesses to his lawyer. But the next day comes, and the routine tries to reassert itself, creating a false feeling of confidence in Patrick, leading to his daytime visit to what he believes is Paul's apartment, which turns out it is not. Patrick immediately melts down again, tries to understand what is real and what is not by calling to and lashing out on his secretary, who, by the way, decides to look through his desk and finds a diary with all his accomplishments, both real and imagined. In the meantime, Patrick finds his friends and his lawyer, confronts him, but gets faced with another harsh reality and the fact that he never killed Paul. This is the end of Patrick Bateman, according to Patrick Bateman. He chooses to admit that the inside does not matter, there are no more barriers left for him to cross, that his pain is constant, which he wants to transpose onto others around him. This confession meant nothing, the punishment eludes me. This last statement, in my opinion, is just another delusional thought of Patrick's. Subconsciously, Patrick wanted to violently break out of his routine, but failed. And now, since he's not willing to go any further, his true punishment begins, and what self-consciousness he had ends. The end. To sum things up, I think this is a great movie that can be interpreted in many different ways. I tried to present my preferred one. It is a self-indulgent monologue depicted as a confession, which I guess it would be to someone like the protagonist. It is fascinating how much the world has changed visually and technologically in the 22 years since the movie was made, and how similar it remained. I hope you enjoyed my take on the movie American Psycho from the year 2000, and if you did, leave a like, a comment, and subscribe.